Each holiday season, Kings Island transforms its royal fountain into Snowflake Lake, a massive ice skating rink for Winterfest. On this episode of Tower Topics, you'll learn what it takes to transform the fountain into the most scenic ice skating experience anywhere in the region.
He's Ryan, I'm Don, and welcome to another episode of Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything Kings Island.
Well, Winterfest is almost here, and each holiday season, Kings Island pulls off one of the most dazzling winter transformations in the Midwest. And of course, we're talking about turning the Royal Fountain into the Snowflake Lake ice rink.
Yeah, I mean, it's astounding. So immediately after Haunt wraps up, before Haunt wraps up, as we're seeing as of this recording, they drain the fountain and they start building the ice rink on the risers.
They do. So they start building from scratch. They're using, scaffolding and plywood. You've got more than 1,000 sheets of plywood that form the base of the ice skating rink. It's strong enough to hold the skaters and all the equipment that's going to be necessary. There's a lot of engineering and logistics that go into a project this big, and the transformation, the timeline to do this, and why you see it closed, the final weekend of Halloween Haunt every year, is that it takes almost 4 weeks for it to be complete, which puts you right up against the opening of Winterfest.
Yeah, it's kind of astounding how quickly they can get it done with just such a large transformation. But the most technical part, obviously, is keeping it cold, the refrigeration system.
That's right. So beneath the skating surface, there's a temporary refrigerating system, a network of flexible pipes and cooling lines that act like the veins of the ice rink. The team starts building that. When they start building the rink, they lay out hundreds of feet of thin plastic or rubber hoses. These are what they're calling the refrigeration mats, if you're part of that team, in a tight kind of grid pattern across the plywood base. These hoses are spaced just a few inches apart, so the cold distributes evenly across the entire rink. And inside those hoses, flows a chilled glycol water mixture. It's essentially an antifreeze type of solution that won't freeze even at the sub-zero temperatures. And the fluid is cooled by a refrigeration plant or chiller unit. And this is positioned, if you're at Kings Island and you're looking at International Street toward the Eiffel Tower, right behind the bandstand on International Street.
Yeah, continuously circulating the cold fluid. So it goes from the chiller into the hoses, back into the chiller to be recooled once again to keep the ice frozen. So it draws heat away from the water above, causing the water to freeze into layers. And then they put down the ice in layers too. And you've barbecued a couple of these things as far as putting ice down. So tell us about how they put down the ice in layers.
Yeah, it's very similar, whether it's Snowflake Lake at Kings Island to build the rink there, down at Fountain Square, or even, if you're in the National Hockey League in one of the buildings, and they're building the ice there. But, workers are going to spray like a real thin layer of water over the piping, and, they let it freeze. So it's kind of a mist as you're going through and kind of, building it up that way. And you get a little bit heavier with the water, as it starts to build up. But you just kind of spray it over the piping and you let it freeze, and you keep repeating that process, dozens of times. That's why it takes, almost 4 weeks to do this. It's not just building, putting down the plywood and you're ready to go. And when you do it this way, it's very important, to do it in layers like that, because that's going to prevent the air bubbles, and it creates that clear, glassy skating surface that the guests are going to see. The sensors, they're going to monitor, both the ice and the fluid temperature constantly. And, if the weather warms up, the system automatically is going to drop the fluid temperature to keep the ice very solid and in great condition for guests.
Yeah, I mean, typically the glycol fluid runs between 10 and 15 degrees Fahrenheit, keeping the ice surface roughly 22 to 25 degrees, which is ideal for skating.
It is. And there's over 30,000 gallons of water frozen, layer by layer, to make this. And crews, they're going to monitor every aspect of it, every stage, for a perfectly smooth skating surface. This is kind of the same process if we're talking through this. So if you watch like the National Hockey League's Winter Classic, the outdoor game, it's the same process to build the outdoor rinks that you're seeing at Kings Island, exactly the same.
Yeah, but once the ice sets, that's when the visual transformation begins. They start putting out the decoration, twinkling lights, everything's polar bear statues. The Eiffel Tower might become some sort of giant Christmas tree. We never know.
314 feet tall.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of, well, okay, Tinker's Toy Factory, whatever iteration that is, that's my favorite part of Winterfest. Second favorite, Eiffel Tower Christmas tree. It's one of those things where International Street is just such a good representation of Winterfest and what it does. It just feels so magical. They've got the smart lights facing down, putting the projections onto the ice. Everything is colored by the lights above. They have the artificial snow every 15 minutes or hour or whatever they're going to end up doing. Just such a beautiful experience and such a great place to skate. If you haven't skated, I know that some people can't skate. Don't worry. 95% of the people on that ice can't skate. Try it out. It's such a magical experience, especially for somebody who visits the park all the time.
No, and when you think about it, you talk about International Street. You got the sound, you got the lights, you got the energy. Ryan, talk about from your perspective, okay? Talk about how it feels skating under the backdrop. You got the tower, you're along International Street. What's that experience like?
More than words can describe. It really is. I mean, especially because you really are in the center of like the magic that is Winterfest. Because you're in the center of International Street. International Street is the best looking section of Winterfest. I think most would agree with that. There you are on the ice. It's an area where you normally can't go because there's normally a fountain there. You're skating around. You're having so much fun. Everybody's falling in, laughing. It's just such an incredible experience. I couldn't recommend. Try it once, please. I said it before. I'll say it again. At least skate there once.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. And Snowflake Lake open with Winterfest, select nights, November 28th to December 31st. I can, promise you, if you go to Winterfest and you want to skate, it's one of the most, scenic, picturesque skating rinks in the region. I mean, it's a perfect photo spot, to look at this. And it's just one of the highlights of any, Winterfest visit is being able to skate on that fountain. And, you see that Eiffel Tower, again, 314 foot tall Christmas tree. You see the lights down the sides of International Street, just a lot of energy. You can't help but, kind of feel the spirit of the season when you're ice skating at Winterfest on the Royal Fountain, which is, again, Snowflake Lake for Winterfest.
Yeah, do it once. I said it with The Conjuring. You guys didn't believe me. Now you missed it. Try it at least once. It is for those who visit Kings Island all the time, it's a holy experience. But there may be some changes to the ice skating coming to Kings Island's Winterfest.
Yeah, we're hearing a little bit about that. If you look at what Carowinds and Canada's Wonderland have done, it historically had been a 90-minute experience for you. That included your time to, get your skates, lace up. But, they've reduced those times to, 45 minutes, so it's cut in half. But the price hasn't been cut in half. But those two parks have done that. So you got to think that possibly Kings Island will also be trimming it back to a 30 to 45-minute experience. That's going to include your lace-up time. So it raises the question, Kings Island fans, how would you feel as someone who's going to go to, has gone to Winterfest and you've done the skating, you want to do it again this year? How would you feel if this change also came to Kings Island where it's reduced, shorter sessions? You're going to get more people, to be able to skate. You're going to be able to add a few more sessions in there than what they've done before. That means more revenue for Six Flags, something that they're in dire need of. But from the experience standpoint, it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Is that enough for you? Do you need the 90 minutes? How do you feel about that? So we invite your feedback. Let us know in the comments if Kings Island is to trim it back, cut it in half. How will that impact your experience? Is it something you're still going to want to do if it's a shorter experience?
What are your thoughts on that, Don?
I feel that, and I think, if you go back to some of our episodes, when we first started doing Tower Topics and talking about Winterfest, I felt that 90 minutes is a long time to ice skate.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, it takes a lot out of you to ice skate that long. I mean, it's something that, most people, I think, physically being on the ice 20 to 30 minutes, is kind of about where, you're kind of ready to get off the ice and go do something else. That's just a lot of skating. Um, so for me, I can live with that. I just think you got to be prepared. You got to be able to get your skates on quickly so you don't waste time there. The session starts and you're still sitting on the bench lacing up. You got to have everything ready to go. You want to make sure that you've bought your tickets in advance for your session, that you've got your skates, you're ready to go. But I think 30 to 45 minutes is plenty of time. You can get a really good workout in. So a lot of people, like you mentioned, they maybe their first time ever on the ice, and they're just kind of clinging around to the sideboards and everything, as they go around, or they've got the thing to help them, the little props and that to help them skate around, or they're just going slowly around with their friends. And that 30 minutes, again, long time. If you're somebody that really can skate, and you're kind of, zigzagging in and out and going around, that's a really good workout, 30 minutes. So I don't have a problem if that's what Kings Island does. I myself would not stay on the ice for 90 minutes. I love ice skating.
Mhm.
I would not stay on the ice for 90 minutes. I would, be somebody that would probably go around for 15, 20 minutes, come off for a little bit, maybe go back out, for the final run. But to me, 30, 45 minutes is plenty of time to get in all the skating that I would need. And there's other things that I want to do at Winterfest too. It's a short time there. If it opens at 5, it closes at 10. 90 minutes of it, if it gets kind of, you're spending that whole time down in the ice server, you miss out on a lot of things at Winterfest too. So I think in that respect, it's going to give you an opportunity to see more of Winterfest if you're not down on the platform, sitting on the bench or whatever it is down there, for that whole time. You don't feel like you have to stay there for 90 minutes because you paid for it.
We talked about this in an episode. It might have even been 2 years ago at this point. But if with the 90-minute sessions between, the waiver and getting your skates and lacing up and skating, that's your night right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So get all of that out of the way. And I do know in the past you were able to go online early and get your waiver done and everything. Do
yes,
it in advance. Get your
yeah.
tickets in advance. Get your waiver done in advance. Um, if you have your own skates, that's going to save you some time too, because you don't have to go in and try to, especially if you're there on like a Saturday when it's gonna be a little busier. But yeah, I think that you know you just want to be as prepared as possible. And also, if you're not someone that has skated before and you're going to get your skates at Kings Island, make sure that it's a nice snug fit for you too. You don't want to have really any wiggle room in your skates. That's where your ankles and that won't be supported as much. The tighter the skate that you can deal with, the better it's going to be. But Ryan, let's just again recap. Just a lot of incredible work goes into creating Snowflake Lake. You bring in an outside company to build it for you.
Mhm.
They hand it off to Kings Island. They're the ones that are maintaining it throughout Winterfest. I would love to be a Zamboni driver. I always wanted to drive the Zamboni at Winterfest. Never got to though, but I always wanted to ride a Zamboni. But as the process is beginning, if it doesn't happen by the time this episode drops, I would imagine that Kings Island would turn off the webcam on International Street, so you're not going to be able to watch it being built. So if I was Kings Island, I would make sure that our guests got to see what goes into this. So I would be filming the process from start to finish. I would interview the people who are building it to kind of walk guests through through the process. You have those visuals of it. We're talking about it, but if we had visuals, it would be a lot stronger and everything like that. So I would hope that they do some kind of video of it, share on their socials, maybe explain it on the Kings Island blog or something, how the rink is being built, and give consistent updates to keep people interested from the time that Haunt's over and now they're just waiting for Winterfest to begin. It's a way to keep people engaged is to let them know about it. And it's also a way to get people to purchase in advance, reserve their skating session now. The more if you're not talking about it, nobody's going to be thinking about that. So the more you talk about it, get people ready to go. I think if you do a Google search or something on Kings Island's website, there's a lot of articles that I wrote, back in the day that still had 7 things you need to know before you go to skate, tips and everything like that still probably on there. But I would definitely take a look at that. But I'd love to see how the work is being done, and I really encourage anyone going to Winterfest. If you've never skated before, just give this a try. Don't be afraid. It's fun, and you won't regret that experience. It'll be the highlight of your Winterfest visit.
It's something you have to do at least once. Not every year necessarily, but at least once.
Maybe we can do a Tower Topics meetup on the ice, meaning everybody we'll pick a session, and that's the session. We're all going to be skating, and we'll do it maybe at a time, maybe when they go like daily. It's not going to be super busy on one of those nights, so we're not going to be doing it on a Saturday when not everybody might be able to get into that skating session that would want to be part of this. So, but we'll pick a time. So something we just, as we're talking, doing the episode, a lot of things just pop into our minds. Maybe look forward to a Tower Topics meetup specifically to ice skate and just spend some time on the ice together. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we're gonna need to take that to the authorities. So leave a comment if you're interested in doing that. And full disclosure, I'm surprisingly not that great of a skater, and Don is surprisingly a very good skater. So don't be shocked when you see these things happen.
I played hockey for a long time. A lot of years. For the most part, on the ice, from say 1979 to 2005 or 6 every year, playing on hockey teams. And then, at different periods where I played another 2 or 3 years, would sit out a couple years, play a couple years, sit out a couple years. Yep, I can still motor around the ice pretty good at my age.
Yeah, you can do very well. Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to the ice skating. Not necessarily meet up unless you in the comments tell us you want to do that.
If we get enough people interested, we'll certainly do it, and we'll put it on the Tower Topics Facebook group. If you're not a member, go ahead and join. Just search Tower Topics on Facebook. But we'll throw it out there and just say, if we did this, are you interested? And I think we would probably want to have, a good representation out there, to be able to go forward and make it worth everybody's time, because part of the idea of these meetups is for you to meet other people that are passionate about Kings Island like you are, like-minded individuals, so we want to make sure we get as many people as possible to be able to do these things.
Sure. Don, let's give a shout out to our Prestige members. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Rao, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Miku, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster, Guys and Girls, Justin Y, Mike Garrett, and Galaxy B-Boy. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams. Some tiers you can get some free stuff, so hit that link if you're interested. Starts at just $2.99 per month.
Really appreciate the members. It is not free to do this podcast. There's a lot of money that Ryan and I invest out of our own pockets to keep it going and stuff. So we really appreciate the support.
Yeah. And speaking of support, if you want to support us in a different way, we've got an online store. We've got the Tower Topics online store where you can get shirts like this. See the script logo, but it's like Tower Topics.
Love that shirt, Ryan. When we first saw the prototype of that, I thought that was going to be one of the best sellers, but there's a lot more than just that shirt on there.
There's alternative logos. There's I Hate Tower Topics stuff. That's my favorite. It hurts me a little bit when people buy it. A lot of people are buying it though, so I don't know how to interpret that. Store.towertopics.com. That's store.towertopics.com for all of your Tower Topics apparel needs. All sorts of stuff in there. We'll be right back with the listener questions.
And now it's time for the Tower Topics listener questions.
All right, first listener question is going to be a voicemail. And if you've got your own voicemail you want to leave for us, so we might play on the show just like this one, you can send them to 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. Let's see what we got here.
Hi, my name is John. I'm from Middletown. I'm just curious why they're not doing dog days anymore. I used to take my little pup over there, and we used to be Snoopy. We used to be a hot dog. I mean, we used to be all kinds of things. And now, what happened to it?
Excellent question. So what happened? You were there for the dog days.
Yeah, it's been a long time since since Kings Island had dog days, 2014 was the last year forward. It was the brainchild of Sarah Mills. Worked with her in the marketing department. It was something that she came up with. It was very well received. Got a lot of attention, a lot of news media stories about it. It was great for social media content. Everyone loved sharing the pictures of their dogs at the park. It was out in the Soak City Water Park area. But there was there was a parade, there was a costume contest for dogs, just a lot of fun. The reason it ended though, and it had a short run, is because guests would bring their dogs there, but there wasn't a place at Kings Island for the dogs to be housed while they would go into the main park and ride the rides. A lot of them, their kids that they would come with, they'd be out in the kids area. It was Snoopy's. It was a Snoopy event at that time. Snoopy's Halloween party, I think was the name of it back then.
Or Great Pumpkin or something.
No, it was Snoopy's Halloween party. It was
Snoopy's
definitely Snoopy. Yeah, definitely
Okay.
Snoopy's, and it was certainly, like I said, really good. A lot of dogs. It was done on Sundays. A lot of dogs would be there. So it was no problem getting people to come there. But when you're going there, you don't really think at the time, okay, after we're done with this daytime activity, out there, and we've done the dog contest and all that, okay, where are we going to put the dog? We want to go ride roller coasters. We want to take the kids trick-or-treating or something out into the park. They had trick-or-treating stuff out there in Soak City where this was held, but the kids want to go ride rides, out in the park. And there was nowhere to really put the dog. So somebody from the family would have to go take the dog back home and come back and meet the family. So there was just a lot of inconveniences like that we would see in the surveys about it. People love the event, love the idea of it. Just there's no accommodations for my dog after we're done with this. While we go enjoy the rest of the park. So that's why it ended. But love the question. It's been 11 years? So 2014. Yeah. So 11 years since they had that. But it was just, one of those things. You sit in a room, you're bouncing ideas, about what can we do? How can we make Sundays, better attended in that? And, Sarah says, what about if people can bring their dogs, and it was just, that collaboration that we had as a team back then. And, just we're able to make things like that happen and provide guests with a different type of an experience.
Yeah. Right. Frank from Mount Washington said, Kings Island used to be great about sharing ridership milestones, like when the Beast hit 50 million rides. Why did they stop doing that? Those updates were interesting and always made the news.
Well, they stopped doing it because I left. I was the one that was driving that. It was something that I knew from, my years as a pass holder when I was doing the racer thing, that Ruth Voss was the PR manager at the time. She was very big about the numbers and sending things to media. At that time you didn't have social media, but she would, have the photographer, Rick Norton was his name, would, we're going to have, this ride's going to give its 5 millionth ride, 10 millionth ride or whatever. And he'd be out there taking the photo, and she'd get it out to the, to the media, and it would be in the Cincinnati Enquirer, Cincinnati Post. It'd be on the TV. So I always remembered that from the 80s, so there was a little bit of a gap, from the time Ruth retired and I got there. So 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it was. And one of the first things I wanted to do was bring that back, and celebrate these milestones. And, it was something, the guest surprise and delight kind of a thing. They'd sit in the train and you'd walk up and say, congratulations, you're the X millionth rider on this ride. And, it was always something that, the news media would pick up. Social media helped, spread the word about it. And it was a way to get something about that attraction. You could always recap, so say it was the Beast, I know when that happened, that the story, what I was sending out to the media, it also said, the Beast, opened in 1979. It's the world's longest. So you get a little bit of a, fact about that too. And you could say Kings Island is now open, just on weekends, or Kings Island is open daily through whatever. It's a way to get those messages out there in a natural way, kind of a way. So it was great for storytelling. I really enjoyed doing that, but after I left, they just don't do that anymore. And, they should, because like I said, it's very easy PR, and it's something that, it makes that visit for whoever happens to hit that milestone, they remember that for the rest of their life.
Certainly. Carol from Fort Thomas, Kentucky said, do you know if Fort Armor's Drumming will be back at Winterfest? I missed seeing them perform last year.
A lot of people miss seeing them perform, but that was one of the cuts last year for Winterfest. We've not seen the entertainment lineup for this year. I would imagine that they're not going to add things back in. If anything else, something gets cut. But yeah, I think people like the costumes that they had, very colorful. The red, white, and blue. Great visual. There was always a crowd around the stage, so I'm not sure why that one got cut. But you're not the only one that misses them. A lot of guests did last year.
Yeah, I mean, if we get that back, I see there's a world where we would get it back, but they would cut something else in favor of it. Maybe mistletones or something like that.
Right.
Bert from Wyoming, Ohio said, so Don, I assume that the meatloaf burgers already got your attention at Winterfest. You've practically made Theme Park Burger Critic your personal brand. Maybe this holiday season surprise us all and review something green, even if it's just the lettuce on the bun.
The meatloaf burger, it does have my attention. I thought that was the best thing at Winterfest in terms of the meals. Looking forward to it already. I'm somebody that, sorry, Bert, I don't like lettuce. I don't like salads or anything like that. So you're not going to see me talking about any of that stuff. Will I talk about the meatloaf burger? Yeah. Will I suggest you try it? Yeah. But I don't think there's going to be any surprises. If anyone that's known me knows the kind of foods that I eat, know what my content's about when I post about food. And there's going to be no changes there.
Well, I mean, places like Holiday World got you to expand your palate this year. You tried fish and chips.
Yeah, I did. No. They had such a wide variety of foods that I always wanted to eat when I went there. Dollywood, same way. Just a lot of variety in that. But the green that you're looking for, grab a Snickers bar. It's going to be a while.
Yeah. And if you've got your own questions, you can send them to host@towertopics.com. That's HOSTS @towertopics.com. Your first name, the city you're from, as well as your question, comment, concern. We'd love to hear from you. You don't want to send us an email, you can send us a text or a voicemail to 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. If you send us a text, we may read it. If you send us a voicemail, we may play it on the air, but we'd love to hear what everybody has to say. I'm Ryan. That's Don. This is Tower Topics.